Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back here today with an article from The Federalist. This is dated November 7th. It says, after Trump's victory, there can be no unity without a reckoning. And I'm just going to say right now that I already agree with everything there. There's the man himself, so let's just get down here. And it says, we can't just say, oh, well, we're all Americans in the end and pretend that everything is okay. Everything is not okay. Yeah, I've seen a lot of certain people on the left being like, yeah, we need to unify. And it's like, no. You don't get to say and do the things that you did and not take account for it. So let's go ahead and jump into the article. Deep breath. It says, back in July, after the first Trump assassination attempt, I wrote that there can be no national unity, no burying the hatchet or cooling the rhetoric with people who have been encouraging political violence and pushing assassination prep for years. You can't smack someone in the face with a hammer and then insist everyone calm down. That was actually the exact metaphor I was thinking of, was punching someone in the face and being like, oh yeah, you can just go now, everybody calm down. So glad to know that I am on the same page as this author, and I haven't read this article yet. I just kind of saw the headline and was like, I'll read it as I go, or throw it on the video and comment on it that way. Continuing, it says, Trump's election victory doesn't change that. And those in the news media who spent years calling Trump a fascist and comparing him to Hitler, claiming he represents a threat to democracy and that he'll use his presidential powers to go after his enemies, should not be forgiven. And as I said in a lot of prior videos, they don't actually know what fascist is. And if they're comparing him to Hitler, then I would tell you that they don't actually know anything that Hitler did. Like, these are people that don't understand the words that they're using. Anyway, it says their lies and nonstop propaganda should not be forgotten. No one should ever take them seriously again. When they try to engage the public square, they should either be ignored entirely or met with a wall of mockery and derision. They are enemies of the American people, whom they openly despise, and there can be no real unity with them, no matter what they say in the future. I couldn't have said it better myself. From basically right here to here, this like times 100,000 billion million, just add all the number words after that, like this to infinity and beyond, to quote Buzz Lightyear right here. That is exactly what I believe. I can't really word it better than that. So let's continue on. It says, going forward, it would be a mark of shame to be associated with MSNBC, CBS News, and CNN. Same goes for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, and Politico. Yes, I mean, I already see it that way, is that, like, if you're from one of those organizations, like if I was someone that ended up being on the news and they're like, oh, I'm with this one of these channels, I just basically like point and laugh at them. It says, all the prestige media outlets that perpetrated lies, distortions, and unhinged rhetoric about Trump should lose so much credibility that their reader and viewer bases collapse, advertisers abandon them, and they get broken up and sold off for parts. If Lorraine Powell Jobs, by the way, she is the owner of, what is it? It is the Atlantic, yeah. And she's Steve Jobs' widow, I think. Says, wants to run a vanity magazine for entertainment, fine, but let's not pretend it's a serious place where serious journalists work. We all know what it is now. Yeah, it's a propaganda outlet, that's it. Says, legacy media outlets, the polling industry, the Democrat-funded nonprofits, and the academics and activists who run them all have all now been exposed as cogs in a giant propaganda machine. Kamala Harris was never ahead. She never had a chance of winning. There was no joy. She wasn't brat. I don't even know what that means. I keep seeing that pop up, and I'm like, that just, given what I know the definition of brat is, like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, what someone is a brat? What does it mean to be brat? Please let me know. I'm not even going to bother looking it up. I know I can Google it. I'm just not going to. She didn't even win the Democrat Party nomination. It was handed to her in a backroom deal. She isn't relatable or cool. She's the most cringy and fake person ever to run for president. Corporate media and the Democrats ran a massive psyop on the American people to make them believe something that wasn't true. And it failed. We should never forget that these people will say anything for the sake of power, so we should never trust them again. Again, I agree with pretty much that entire paragraph, word for word, syllable for syllable. That's perfectly put. So, continuing on, it says, for the government officials and institutions who tried to bankrupt and jail Trump, there should be more severe and formal consequences. On Wednesday, it was reported that the Justice Department will be dismissing special counsel Jack Smith and dropping his cases against Trump before Trump takes office. That's great, but Smith should not be allowed to simply walk away. He and everyone else at Biden's DOJ who was involved in these lawfare cases against Trump needs to be investigated and held accountable for their actions. 1,000%. This dude should actually be arrested. And plus, it's like if Trump was doing something that was so bad, like, wouldn't they continue to prosecute him so that they're not doing it now? What does that tell you, person who out there who may be disagreeing with this? Like, that probably tells you that, well, he didn't really have much of a case to begin with, and it was all political. Continuing on. And of course, the problem goes far beyond Smith. That is true. It says what the Justice Department and the FBI did to Trump was one of the most egregious abuses of power in American history, and we shouldn't just shrug our shoulders at it because Trump won. And he needs to go in there and clean those places out. In fact, I'd say utterly disband the FBI, but the Justice Department needs to be, like, cleaned out pretty severely. Says these agencies need to be dismantled entirely. Oh, there we go, saying what I was thinking. These agencies need to be dismantled entirely and rebuilt from scratch. I'd say don't even rebuild the FBI. The FBI in particular has shown itself to be an enemy of the American people and a danger to the Republic. Its director, Christopher Wray, should not simply be allowed to resign. He should be removed and placed under criminal investigation. Agreed. The same goes for New York Attorney General Letitia James, whose lawfare against Trump is an ongoing scandal. James said on Wednesday that her office is preparing to fight back against the incoming Trump administration. Like, with what? Like, what are you going to do? She should be disbarred, at a minimum for trying to bankrupt Trump with a bogus fraud case in which there were no fraud victims. Right, yeah. You can't exactly, like, I like how they found him guilty, and it's like he was guilty of fraud and there were no one that was actually defrauded, okay? And I like what Mike Davis, who is a potential attorney general pick, who I'd be totally on board with being the AG, he came back, and, like, go look what he said about her. He basically was like, yeah, we're coming after you. If he gets put in there, he's like, I'm coming after you. And she should 100% be disbarred. All these people who are doing this lawfare stuff should be disbarred, and the judges on these cases should be disbarred as well and removed from the bench, at a minimum. Okay, so yeah, that should 100% happen. Says then there's Liz Cheney, oh boy, who in her role as vice chair of the January 6th committee has been accused of inducing witness perjury, destroying documents, and suppressing exonerating evidence. Like with Cassidy Hutchinson, where she met with her beforehand to basically tell her what to say or something to that effect. Liz Cheney posted what seemed like a message of conciliation on X Tuesday night, saying you must accept the results of the election. No, I mean, well, yeah, we have to accept the results of the election, but you ain't getting off that easily, sister. But you shouldn't get off so easily. It's like I'm not even reading the sentence, and he's saying what I'm thinking. I like it. Her role in the January 6th committee should be fully investigated, and she should face criminal charges if warranted. So should everybody that was on the January 6th committee. All of those people should be, on day one, let out of prison, their records exonerated, except for the people that were actually committing crimes. I'm talking about the people, who were, like, actually hitting police officers, not for the people who were just, like, walking around. Okay, but those people should all be released from prison, and everybody that was a part of that show trial should be brought up on charges. Because the truth is, if Trump hadn't won, he'd be going to prison. For supporting Trump, Elon Musk would have been targeted by the government, bankrupted, and subjected to years of lawfare. True. Because the people who howled loudest about Trump weaponizing the government against his political opponents have spent years doing just that to Trump and his associates. Yes, the problem with Democrats and the left in general is that it's all projection. Every single thing that they claim the right is doing, they themselves are actually doing, and a lot of times doing in a much worse way. Okay, like there's always an example of them doing the exact same thing, but usually orders of magnitude worse. Because the idea that we should just forget all of that now for the sake of unity is deeply misguided and naive. If those responsible aren't held accountable, they will never stop trying to destroy their enemies by any means they can. Before we ever achieve anything like unity in America again, there must be a reckoning and there must be justice. Without those things, the divisions in our country won't be able to heal. Even with a reckoning, unity will be difficult. Yeah, I mean, that's undoubtedly one of those things. But I think the way I look at it is you need to go back at the people doing this to you hard enough to where they're never going to want to try it again, because they're going to be like, oh, wait, there are actually consequences to our actions. People really are going to do stuff back to us, and possibly worse. So continuing on, it says, we can't just say, oh, well, we're all Americans in the end. That won't cut it. The stark reality is that there are a large number of our countrymen who are no longer Americans in any meaningful sense. As Glenn Elmers has written, they do not believe in, live by, or even like the principles, traditions, and ideals that until recently defined America as a nation and as a people. It is not obvious what we should call these citizen aliens, these non-American Americans, but they are something else. As after those who broke the law are held accountable, and those who lied are ostracized and ignored, we will still face the problem of disunity and division among our people. We will still be two nations occupying the same territory, with two irreconcilable visions of what the country should be. We can't paper over those differences, and we shouldn't. To achieve real and lasting unity, we'll need a counter-revolution in America, a refounding of the country. That in turn will require a conversion of the American people and return to the ideals, principles, and way of life that made our republic possible in the first place. This might be one of the article that, the entire time I've been doing this, which has been about 2 years at this point, this might be the article that I've felt the most for and agreed with the most. Like, I just kind of felt this in my core. Like, I agree with, like I said already, every single syllable I think of this entire article. So yeah, I'm on board with that 100%. So do you agree with this or not? Do you think there should be unity? Do you think we should go after all the people who made Trump's life hell and just doing all the illegal things like Letitia James or Jack Smith? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.